Leonidas at Thermopylae. Leonidas was a son of one of the kings of Sparta. As a boy he had been trained in the gymnasium, and he excelled in all manly sports. As a man he fought in the Spartan army. After the death of his father and mother and his half-brother, he became king. 11 years later he led the Greek army against the Persians, who were threatening Greece again. The defeat at Marathon had made Darius all the more determined to conquer Greece. But 4 years after that defeat, he died just as he was making preparations for another attack. His son, Xerxes, came to the throne. After a while, Xerxes decided to carry out his father's plans to launch another attack on Greece. He spent 4 years collecting men and horses and ships. His army and fleet were the largest the world had ever heard of at that time. The land forces met at Sardis in Asia Minor, and they marched to the shores of the Hellespont, which is the narrow strait between Europe and Asia. Xerxes ordered his engineers to make 2 bridges of boats across the strait for his army to pass over. This was done, but the bridges were not strong enough, and a storm destroyed them. There is a story that the loss of the bridges made Xerxes so angry that he ordered his soldiers to scourge the waters 300 lashes, and then to throw a set of chains into it to teach the water that he was its master. 2 new bridges were built, and Xerxes then marched his army over them to the European shore of the Hellespont. Here his fleet of 1,200 ships and 3,000 smaller vessels had already arrived. On a hill overlooking the strait, a throne of marble was built. Upon this marble throne Xerxes sat and viewed his land forces drawn up along the shore, and his ships sailing in the strait. It took the army 7 days and 7 nights to cross the bridges. After crossing, the land force made its way southward until it reached a high and almost impassable mountain range. Between this range and the sea was a point so narrow that only a single wagon had enough room to pass. The Greeks called this narrow part of the road Thermopylae, which means gates of the hot springs, because of the hot sulfur springs nearby. The Persians had every intention of marching through the path of Thermopylae, but they were stopped by a Greek force commanded by Leonidas, the king of Sparta. His band of men numbered only about 4,000 men. 300 of these men were from Sparta. The rest came from several different states. The Greeks took their stand at the narrowest part of the pass. Against them, Xerxes sent 1 division of his army after another. All were defeated and driven back. For 2 days the fighting went on with great losses to the Persians. The Greeks, however, hardly lost a man. At last, when it seemed that the Persians were lost, a Greek trader showed a band of Persians a path that led over the mountain. This pass was poorly defended by Greeks from one of the northern states. It was easily taken by the Persians, who then marched around behind Leonidas. Leonidas learned of their approach in time to escape. Some of his army did retreat, but he, with 300 Spartans and 700 men from a small town, refused to do so. Greece had trusted the pass to them to hold, and they preferred to die rather than leave their post. When someone said that the arrows of the Persians would come in such showers that it would conceal the sun, one of the Spartans replied, "So much the better. We shall fight in the shade." Leonidas was now pinned between the 2 divisions of the Persian army, one at each end of the pass. Instead of waiting to be attacked, he led his men forward against the Persians. The Greeks fought desperately, but they had no chance against such vast numbers. All but 1 man was slain. Afterwards, a monument was raised to their memory. It bore the simple inscription, "Stranger, tell the Spartans that we lie here in obedience to their commands." After the battle, Xerxes marched to Athens. He found it almost deserted. All the Athenians had fled except for a little band who held the Acropolis. They hurled rocks upon the attacking Persians, and for a long time they were able to resist them. At length, however, the Persians found a place where no guard had been stationed, because the rocky wall was so steep the Athenians thought it was impossible to climb. The Persians rushed up the wall and charged in on the brave defenders. The struggle was soon over. Some of the Athenians hurled themselves headlong down the rock slopes. The rest were put to death, and the city fell into the hands of the Persians. The conquering army plundered and burned the city. Even the sacred olive tree, believed to have sprung up at Athena's touch, was burned to the ground.